So, our fear comes in two major forms, and these two forms will hold us back from realizing what it is we need to realize in life. It will hold us back from experiencing what we need to experience in life. And in actuality, it will cause us to do things we probably shouldn't do, thinking we're going to get results that we think we need. This is the Warrior Up podcast. I'm George Webby, and today I want to talk about the two roots of fear. So, you kind of have to go back to understand how fear started. If we look in Genesis chapter 3, which a lot of people kind of look at as a kind of fanciful story, an allegory, it can be used as an allegory, but I think it actually took place because of all the insight that's in that story you can't really make up. So here's what I'm saying here. So in that fall, and I would challenge you to go back and read it, a couple things happened. Two major fears came on the horizon when Adam and Eve fell, when they sinned. And those two major fears were the fear of rejection and the fear of failure. Now, hear me out here. As soon as they realized what they had done, when the full ramifications had hit them, they immediately experienced shame. And shame is the result of those two fears. And so what happens is that kind of inheritance, spiritual, emotional inheritance, was transferred to us. We experience that in every single day of our life. We look to avoid shame, or shame tends to direct us away from the things that we should be doing because we don't want to fail. We all have goals. We all have things we want to do. If you have a will, if you have any kind of desire, you have goals. You want to accomplish certain things. You have accomplishments. And it's that fear that you will not accomplish it and the ramifications of not accomplishing it that leads you to make decisions to avoid shame, rejection. Because if we fail, we feel like we're going to get rejected. And here's the funny thing. We'll even reject in our own mind. We'll reject ourselves. We get down on ourselves about that. And I'm not saying that's should or shouldn't do, but this is the way of the flesh. This is the way of our closest enemy to us, our flesh. And I'll give you, for instance, scripturally. Go into chapter 3 and see what happens. When God calls out to Adam, he says, "Where are you?" Now, we know that God knows all things. He knew Adam's location. He wasn't confused on that. He was asking Adam, "Where are you right now? You're somewhere else. You used to be with me, but now you're no longer with me. Where are you?" And we know that Adam conferred with him. "We heard your walking or voice," depending on the translation, "and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." And his hiding was because he was ashamed of his nakedness. But here's the cool thing. Go back and read it. God says to Adam, "Who told you were naked?" And I think the key to that question is that no one told him. Adam told himself. So it's this self-talk. The flesh now takes over. Instead of hearing the words of God and telling him who he is and defining him, because just prior to this whole interaction with Eve and the serpent and all that, God had basically told Adam who he is by telling him what he'd have him do and giving him a helper to do that. He said that he put him in the garden to tend and to keep it, and then he assigned him to name the animals, to have authority over them, and he gave him a helpmate because it wasn't good for man to be alone. He gave him a helpmate to help him do that, to tend and to keep the garden. So Adam was defined by God in that case. And so we know that he failed in that. He gave over his duties to tend and to keep. He had authority. He gave it over basically to his wife, who the helpmate became the primary in that case, and she went one-on-one with the created order, which was the serpent, and lies ensued from there. And so here's what happens. They exchanged the truth for God for a lie that was planted through the serpent. And they continue to tell lies. They continue to tell themselves they're naked because what is nakedness? And so what do we do? When we experience nakedness, we have to find a covering. And so we find the one that's closest to us. Adam and Eve blended into their environment. They pretended to be bushes. A lot of times when I was a kid growing up, and even now, you'll see pictures of the Adam and Eve scenario where they're like wearing bikinis made out of leaves or something. Speedos and bikinis made out of leaves. What is funny, I think about that. It does say that they covered their their loins and things of that nature, but I always kind of picture it more like a ghillie suit. They tried to look like a bush. They hid in the bushes, so they tried to adapt to their environment to become something they're not. And so that's the ramifications of the fear of rejection and the fear of shame and fear of failure, is that we will hide and try to blend in with our environment. We'll try to tell ourselves and project a falsehood to everyone else. So we start to lie. And guess what that does? That causes conflict. We immediately have conflict within ourselves. We have conflict with our God, and we have conflict in our relationships, because when you lie, there can be no connection. And so the key is to understand how fear works and how our flesh is going to try to coax us to experience shame and that fear of failure, and to compensate for it by hiding and lying and manipulating. And that's definitely going to cause conflicts within, without, and with our God. And so what is the antidote to this? Christ. He comes in, he has a new covering, and that I'll point it out to you in Genesis. They tried to cover themselves with fig leaves of their own creation, and God slays an animal and covers them with animal pelts, thus pointing to the crucifixion and the covering of Christ. That is an insufficient covering, that he's now going to cover them with a new covering that's going to be in the sacrificing of blood. There had to be the shedding of blood to cover them the right way. And it's a premonition, a precursor, a pre-understanding of Christ and his sacrifice. And it's only through him that we can have success, victory in salvation, in our redemption, our acceptance into the kingdom of God, and then two, to have his righteousness so that we don't experience shame. So these are the two secrets to the two roots of fear found in the flesh and the lies that we tell ourselves. I hope that encourages you. I hope it edifies you. I hope it gives you a better understanding of how our flesh thinks and how it tries to motivate us to do the wrong thing. All right, guys, as always, if you like the content, like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep putting it out. God be with you. Have a great one. Peace.